welcome to UNEP's Pavilion's Team Day centered around a very important topic, forests and land use. And today coincides with COP Presidency's Nature Day as well. My name is Carina Borromeo, and I work for the RED Plus Climate Mitigation Unit at UNEP and the UN RED program. It is my honor to guide you today in this important day where we will explore the different dynamic blend of challenges and solutions, ambition and action on nature. Let's kick off this discussion today by delving into the financial realm. Where do we currently stand in terms of financing for nature-based solutions to address the triple planetary crisis of climate change, biodiversity loss, and pollution? It is my pleasure to hand over to Ms. Mireille Atala, the head of the Nature for Climate Action Branch, and who will moderate this much anticipated session on the launch of the State of the Finance for Nature report. Over to you, Mireille.
Thank you very much, Carina. Good morning, everyone. As introduced, my name is Mireille Atala, and it's a great pleasure for me to moderate this session that will see the launch of the 2022 iteration of the State of Nature Finance for Nature report. For those who don't know the report, it's a report that covers financing for or against nature this year. It's an innovation. In order to achieve the objectives of the 3 Rio Conventions. So we're talking about maintaining climate warming at below 1.5 degrees as per the Paris Agreement. We're talking about achieving the 30 by 30 target of the Global Biodiversity Framework, and we're talking about the land degradation neutrality of the UNCCD. It's a great pleasure for me to welcome our panel, but also to welcome our colleagues from BMZ and from Global Canopy that have contributed to the preparation of this report. As we're late on time, Heike, I'd like to invite Ms. Heike Henn, Director for Climate, Energy and Environment and Commissioner for Climate Policy and Climate Financing from BMZ in Germany. Please, Heike, for the keynote.
Thank you so much. It's really great to have the opportunity to see you all this morning. It's Nature Day. It's a report on finance. Finance is at the heart of the discussions right now in the COP to really make it a success. But also, I mean, nature and nature-based solutions are contributing to mitigation and adaptation that are the other pillars of our debate. So from my perspective, or the perspective of the German Ministry for Economic Cooperation, BMZ, Nature Day should be like every day, but translating it into policy, we really need to mainstream it and put it into everything we do. So I would rather like my title to be not commissioner on only climate, but really put biodiversity, nature in there. And not as the little sister, brother, or whatever of climate, but yeah. So this is why I'm really happy to be with all of you, and we need action and ambition, not only today. And you mentioned the 3 conventions, and they are somehow overwhelming. Everything is in there. Some say we maybe shouldn't have separated them. So all we really need to do is mainstream, cooperate, and integrate as much as possible. I think we have everything we need. So we are really happy to be a partner with this new report because we need more finance for nature-based solutions, and we need to do it more effectively and more efficiently for impact. And we all know that there is a gap. The 7 trillions are somehow also there if we get the priorities right on how we spend money, because the negative impact of the subsidies that are against nature, against climate, the impact is so devastating at the same time and is spending the money much needed for change. So we really highly value the contribution of the new report. We have to follow up politically, but also in substance. And I think this, I hope, will facilitate the discussion around the report at this COP and beyond. Germany, we are very committed still. We have a budgetary crisis, but I don't want to talk about it. We reached our goal for increasing climate finance to 6 billion 3 years earlier, already last year. So we contributed $10 billion to the 100 billion that hopefully were reached in 2022. And part of it is, 1/4 is for biodiversity. Together with our environmental colleagues, we push for even greater part of biodiversity in this finance. And we have a couple of concrete measures that we think are innovative also in bringing in the private sector, for example, the Legacy Landscapes Fund that works on long-term funding in really biodiversity hotspots in different continents, the Blue Action Fund in the marine biodiversity sphere. We are working in 40 countries, really in huge programs in the Amazon region, Congo Basin, also Southeast Asia, on the hotspots with countries in ecosystem restoration and also 30 by 30 protection. One thing I would like, and then come to end because we are running out of time, and I'll try to be quick. With all our, I think, ambition and trying to contribute really also to the finance, something that we believe strongly in and try to engage also is that we need the right political incentives. We were talking about subsidies already, but it's also the right enabling framework in countries to give the right incentives to all actors to invest nature positively. So we try to work with policy-based financing as well, where countries have ambition. We are engaged in the country packages and all kind of discussions or initiatives that not only focus on necessary programs, but also have a policy perspective, because this will enable us to really make progress more systemically and quickly, and that is what we need. So thank you so much, and I'm looking forward to the discussion.
Thank you very much. Heike, thank you very much. This was precisely the intervention of our executive director to the Coalition of Climate Finance Ministers to the Coalition of Finance Ministers for Climate. It's realigning the policy signals to enable these 7 trillions that we say need to be realigned to nature-based solutions to be realigned. For those who, as we are at the launch of the report today, we would like to play a video that gives you really the substance and the essence of what the report has concluded and the approach for this year. Technician.
Nature is a critical ally in the fight against climate change and biodiversity loss. UNEP's State of Finance for Nature tracks finance flows to nature-based solutions and investment needs. For the first time, this year's report estimates finances for activities that directly harm nature from both private and public sectors and compares it to finance going to nature-based solutions. A staggering almost $7 trillion were pumped into activities with a direct negative impact on nature in 2022. The private sector is responsible for much of this, at $5 trillion. That's 140 times larger than private finance flows to nature-based solutions. Around 43% of private nature-negative finance flows through 5 industries: construction, electric utilities, real estate, oil and gas, and food and tobacco. The remaining $1.7 trillion is spent by governments on subsidies that harm nature. That's 10 times more finance than they're putting into nature-based solutions. Meanwhile, nature-based solutions remain dramatically underfunded at $200 billion per year. To meet climate, biodiversity, and restoration targets, this needs to triple by 2030. Urgent action is needed from governments, businesses, and finance to repurpose nature-negative finance flows into nature-positive activities. Scaling investment in nature-based solutions would allow to cost-effectively use nature to tackle climate change and biodiversity loss.
So I hope with this excerpt it gives you really the sense of where the report is headed to. It's not a lack of funding, it's where the funding is really going. And on this note, I'd like to invite Nikki Madras, our colleague from Global Canopy, for his intervention. Please.
Thank you very much. Well, it's such a pleasure to be here. I'm Nikki Madras, Executive Director of Global Canopy, one of the partners on this year's report. Thank you to UNEP for your tremendous leadership, and BMZ and other partners. And this is year 3, as you've heard, of the report, but it's more than a report, really. I mean, it's a platform, it's a data set that allows us to track finance over the years, but also to target better interventions, as has been said, for nature positive every precious year. This year's report has more intel. I mean, it's growing in its scope. So this year, there are private sector impacts included, which is building on last year's. And of course, now we can begin to see trends as well in the report because we're on year 3. So we're getting richer and richer insights as we go. So I'll make 3 quick points to add a bit of color to the video that you've already seen, and you'll see the report in full later. I mean, the first, how can we not talk more about that 7 trillion, the very big number in the video, of which, you know, it's dominated by private finance, right? So 5 trillion coming from the private sector, 1.7 trillion from public money, from subsidies. It's a shocking number. It's one we've all heard before. It's up 55% from the 2021 report. Now, of course, there are, you know, political context to that, but my God, we need to see that number going down, not up. This is a vast engine of capital and real economy activity that is driving nature, climate, and impacts on people. And a few reflections. I mean, this is direct finance, this number. So the quick thing that tells us is that this is certainly an underestimate. I mean, I think the report modestly says it's probably an underestimate. I mean, this is an underestimate because we are not tracking the vast amounts of indirect finance that also go into this. And, you know, at Global Canopy, we've been doing somewhat similar estimates for some years on deforestation finance. And there we've come up with a number of 6 trillion in private finance driving the highest risk deforestation sectors. So, you know, we're coming up with the same sort of numbers. I think we're in the right ballpark, and it's a very dangerous ballpark that we're in at that 7 trillion. The SFN report does more than scare us. It also helps us to focus and target action. So we saw the 5 sectors that were mentioned in the film. Those sectors, I won't repeat them, that 15% of overall investment flows in the economy, but 43% of nature negative flows. So that can guide us to target change. And, you know, we, like many of you, have been involved, and like UNEP, in the Task Force for Nature-Related Financial Disclosures, where there's sector guidance on those particular sectors. And Global Canopy, as a piloting partner, has been working, for instance, with a major construction group looking at a very large number of construction projects across Asia. We'll report on findings early next year, but there are so many opportunities there once you start looking through this wider nature lens. So that's the good news, but nature-based solutions, my second point, as we've heard, represent just $200 billion at the moment. Now, private no longer dominates, public sector dominates. It's 82% of that sum comes from governments. And the private sector has 140 times, as you saw in the video, more contributions to the negative than the positive. Overall, these numbers are up 11% on 2021, the first report, which might sound good in a wholly different context, but if you think that we need to triple or almost triple that amount by 2030, which is not many years away, then that rate of growth has to dramatically increase. We're looking at almost 300% growth needed by 2030, and then more growth in the years following. The share of private capital needed and the opportunity, but let's frame it in the sense of an opportunity, otherwise that money won't flow. But the share and opportunity for private sector money is estimated by the report to go up to 33% from 18% that it is now. So it's a big increase needed for restoration across the world and many other interventions. But it's worth saying that the public sector will need to continue playing a role in policy and in finance, and conservation, the report shows, will play an important role going forward. We need to protect what we've got. It's ecologically, scientifically sound, but it's also cost effective and makes good sense on all fronts. So we need to see governments continue to play a role and step up. I mean, it was heartening to see the Tropical Forests Forever Fund proposal by Brazil at this COP, 250 billion from different sectors, which can underwrite that conservation and the bioeconomy that needs to grow. I need to speed up a little bit. So, final point is key message of this report. We need a finance for nature turnaround. You know, we're looking at a turnaround here, which means smart, strategic, connected transition from the 7 across to increase the finance available for nature positive, but also to drive change in the real economy through engagement of that finance. That finance has to work to drive change in companies. And so greening, as the report says, greening finance, making finance green, is the single biggest intervention that we can make on nature, climate, and people in the context that we're in to drive the transition in the real economy. And financing green, that NBS number, is vital. It needs to grow 3 times by 2030, 4 times by 2050, and it can contribute to climate, 15 gigatons per year, removals estimated in the report, biodiversity, returning to average levels of 1970s biodiversity, and of course for people and livelihoods, and we need people at the center of this equation. So look, we need both, but what frustrates me and what we can't see is the same company contributing on both fronts. You know, contributing to the positive and then just continuing to contribute to the negative. That is definitely not what success looks like, and lots of companies at the moment are still at that phase. So the Great Nature turnaround has started, but we need to put boosters on it, and the State of Finance for Nature report, dataset, and platform will be there to track and guide and support every year. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Nikki, and thank you for reminding us that the report builds year on year and introduces new elements. Maybe next year, for the time being, the report has only looked at the contribution of nature to the Paris Agreement from the 1.5 degree lens. Maybe next time around, as the global goal on adaptation maybe are agreed or the framework is agreed. I think it was Heike who mentioned the biodiversity hotspots, the critical ecosystems. But for adaptation and resilience, we need every ecosystem to be resilient. And therefore, that mainstreaming becomes absolutely critical. It's not about endangered species. It's not about critical ecosystems. It's about ecosystem functions and their resilience being sustained as the mesh and the web of life. So maybe next year we can augment our report with that dimension as well. It now gives me a great, great pleasure to introduce my panel. On our panel, we have Carina Pimenta, who's the National Secretary for Bioeconomy at the Ministry of Environment and Climate Change in Brazil. We have Marina Negrisoli, Global Sustainability Director of Suzano. And we have Diego Lugano, who is the founder and CEO of Campo Capital and partner of the Restoration Seed Capital facility that supports small and medium entrepreneurs from ideation on the way to investment and implementation. If you'll allow me, I will start with Carina, because we've heard already from both previous keynote speakers the importance of the signal and of the policy signal. So can you give us our thoughts about the role of the government to incentivize and create favorable conditions for nature-based solutions? And Brazil is really a pioneer in that by promoting bioeconomy approaches in the Amazon and elsewhere as well. Oh.
No worries. Well, thank you very much for the opportunity to be here for UNEP to invite and for putting forward this important report. I was anxious to see the results on it, and I think the approach is very unique and very important for policymakers. Well, talking about the Brazilian perspective, so first, on the political side, there are kind of elements that are putting us in the way of an ecological transformation across different sectors and segments in the public sphere and the federal government, and that interlinkages with state level policy making, also bringing our partners in the private sector and civil society into the cooperation to put forward policies that make all of this. So just to explain, that's the first time in the Ministry of Environment, which takes care of all the environmental policy, that we have a specific vice ministry for bioeconomy, for creating these linkages into policies, existing policies, to connect with the approach that we want to see engaging in the economic side in the future. So what we are striving there is to create a national policy on bioeconomy, and it kind of connects very much with what is inside this report, because when you look at the array of policies that we have, most of what we are looking into is how I redirect policies. So how do I redirect the industrial policy that's going to be launched in December now to make sure that bioeconomy, nature-based economy, it's there with efforts from the Ministry of Industry, Service and Trade to make sure that this is not overshadowed by the other segments. How our policy on agriculture, which is the engine behind our agro-business, is partly redirected to bioeconomy and partly engaged with low emissions agriculture, low carbon agriculture. So this is the approach of a bioeconomy in Brazil, first of all, on a policy level. We have an array of policies. We have public resources that can be redirected, innovation policy, for make sure that we use our basic research on biodiversity, which is vast and shows the richness and the great opportunities that we have, but it's completely disconnected to industrial approach. It is disconnected from small and mid-sized companies that are innovating in the uses of biodiversity in products, services, and processes. So this is kind of, it looks like we have to announce a great policy, but actually what we have to do is a very, how do I say this? Very specific entry points into different policies to make sure that we are putting forward we are in the right path. And in a larger vision out of bioeconomy, this is what the ecological transformation plan launched by the Ministry of Economy says. It says we have to move into this direction, so energy transition, green finance, green infrastructure, bioeconomy, circular economy. In Brazil, these are two different approaches. So this is kind of the direction we are putting forward and creating, of course, the instruments for finance. So taxonomy in Brazil, something we are far, far behind in order to be able to see this more clearly and direct investments from the point of view of financial agents. So I'm just like the general is seen. In bioeconomy, it is important to say our approach as a forest-based country, as a biodiversity country, is on the sustainable use of biodiversity. There are lots of different approaches, but this is what we aim because that's where we lack policy. And so what we are doing is uniting a group of 14 ministries out of 38 just in the federal government to organize and coordinate this different set of policy to make bioeconomy works. And bioeconomy is different in Brazil in different cases. The Amazon is kind of what will help us keep the decreasing on deforestation that we are seeing now. You all know that we were able to reduce 50% of deforestation this year in relation to the previous year from January to November. But that continues. We have to accelerate the bioeconomy. And for that, I have to say, these numbers won't be able to enter into the cycle of bioeconomy if we don't look at the blended finance mechanisms. And for that, international cooperation, UNEP, BMZ, and all of these are very structural in the approach that we can do to be able to fill this gap, because everybody says there's finance, but businesses are not there. We are growing businesses in agroforestry. Companies are making arrangements for that, but we will have to look into nature finance as an incentive policy. So blended finance, as we do doing subsidies, as we do in many other instruments, will have to be in place in order for us to reach large numbers in restoration areas, such as the 12 million hectares, which is our NDC shares, to keep our forests standing and populations that live in the forest being part of this economy, because bioeconomy in Brazil cannot exist if it's not an inclusive one. So the centerpiece for us is the social bioeconomy, just to make sure that we are looking into the social side of it. Otherwise, no other pathway for economy will exist. It's going also always to be the unequal processes that led Brazil to where we stand now. So to revert this, we have to use these incentives, these blended finance and these mechanisms on that. And to finalize, just 2 points. Yes, we launched an initiative on tropical forest forever, exactly because we are looking into that. How can we redirect these massive investments on sovereign funds in other places to make sure that conservation and biodiversity loss, conservation will stand and biodiversity loss will be stopped. And I think this is one of the ideas. For that, we have several instruments for conservation and for promoting finance. And for us, in the G20 presidency that started now on December 1st, we have 2 areas in where this discussion can qualify the debate and maybe advance, because G20 is clear, it's key for that. So in the financial track, we are going to talk about sustainable finance. And we created an initiative on bioeconomy under the different groups. And this initiative on bioeconomy will relate to what? To finance and to environment, exactly connecting these 2 pieces that we are talking here. So that's the idea, to leverage this discussion to the G20 and then also to other instruments that need to be talking more and doing more on this field. I'll stop here.
That was extremely rich and informative, Marina. Please give her a round of applause. Thank you very much. And I think you really created the transition towards Carina now. Sorry, I keep, my brain is not functioning well. All right, so you've created the transition towards the question for Marina. Can you tell us a little bit more? There's a lot of skepticism about reconciling profits as a company with nature-positive investment. And Suzano is one of the examples of that. Can you tell us a little bit more about it, please?
Sure, thank you. First of all, it's an honor to be here. Thank you for the invitation. Thank you for the support. I think more and more we have to bring up this topic to the core agenda of the world. So I work for Suzano. Suzano is a nature-based product producer, and we do that now at scale, because I think scale is one of the answers for the question here. Currently, we own and manage 2.6 million hectares, almost size of Belgium, so it's sizable business. We do plant on a sustainable way trees in 1.6 million hectares, and 1 million we set aside for conservation. And we do a lot of partnerships, mostly with the government level, but on restoring and having this point. But the point is, when we grow our business with the planted trees, the way we do a responsible forest management, that is the key for us to foster, to keep biodiversity, and to protect and see the long run. So our forest management, we plant eucalyptus tree intertwined in a mosaic way with nature plots of conservation. And that's, you bring up the profit thing, right? I think it depends on the lenses and also on the timing, as the company says. Because we could say here, oh, we do more conservation than the law. In Brazil, we have currently 40% set aside for conservation in all of our biomes. And
the law is 11%, if I'm not mistaken.
Depends on the biome.
Okay.
In the Amazon, it's super high. In Atlantic forest, a bit less. But for our area, it's average 28%, and we have 40. Depending on the lenses you use, that it makes sense or it doesn't make sense. But for us at Suzano, we are looking on the long run. Next year, we will be 100 years, and we want to be here for the next 100 years. So I think it's also our part to be part of the solutions. And even for the short and medium term, doing the right thing, having a good, responsible management, it helps us. And I will give very few examples. When you have mosaic technique, and we rely a lot of big data, information, we can create stability on the watersheds. So our planted eucalyptus, they grow on a constant basis, and they are more resilient to any climate change. We launched 2 years ago a project to create ecological corridors connecting these plots of native conservations that we have, because we also want to increase biodiversity. It's a quite ambitious goal. I have my team working hard to develop that, but it's 500,000 hectares connecting in the 3 biomes where we operate, and we aim to deliver that by 2030. So just to give a bit of a size, it's 10 times the island of Manhattan. So I need a lot of people working there to create this restoration, and we are doing that not only on our land, but also incentivizing local producers, mainly in poorer areas, to adhere and participate with us. I think what you said, it's key for our operations. In Brazil, poverty is a theme. And we will not solve any environmental issues if we don't address the social aspect. So for everything that we do, we have social intertwined with the environment. So together with this corridor target, we also launched this long-term goal of lifting 200,000 people out of poverty by 2030. And for that, we have been focusing in supporting them on, in the Amazon region, for instance, supporting creating associations to foster extractivism, art, handcraft, and a lot of different But the issue is all doing this at scale, because this requires a lot of efforts. This requires, us to be on the ground, to know. And for those of you who are familiar with a continental country, we have operations on the outskirts, on the transition of the Amazon. It's one reality in Maranhão. And then I have operations in Mato Grosso do Sul, in Cerrado. It's, for Europe, it's a different country, So it adds a lot of complexity that we have to handle. But this is important, that we have to find local solutions. And having these bioproducts, at the forefront of our economy in Brazil, and having the support from the government, having key customers globally, this is what's going to drive more and more responsible actions. Still on this restoration point, that it is at the core center of our strategy. We have been now for almost 25 years developing research and intelligence on restoration. We created Ecofuturo, which is an institute, an NGO. We maintain them. And we just launched a month ago a booklet on restoration, sharing our knowledge, our experience, and we distribute that in Brazil to small and medium farm holders. Because it doesn't help it only we are doing things. We have to work with the public sector. We have to work with the NGOs to spread the word of what needs to be done and how we are going to get there. We are a big company. For us, it's not hard to access funds, money, and the banks. They want to give us money. But how we can also help these smallholders, to come along.
Sorry, if I may, because of time, I think this is a fantastic transition to our last panelist, whom Diego Lozano, who is, as I mentioned, is the CEO and founder of Campo Capital, and we are very proud at UNEP to be your partners in the Restoration Seed Capital facility that does exactly that, support small and medium-sized entrepreneurs that want to do something different that is nature positive. Can you tell us how you're going about this?
Yeah. And first of all, thank you very much for the invitations. Thank you very much, just not for that. Thank you very much for the UNEP and Restoration Seed Capital Facility for give us the opportunity to be partner of this very special program that you have, along with the University of Frankfurt as well. And you finish saying we are a big company and everybody wants to give us money. We are in the opposite.
Exactly.
we are in the opposite. We are not a big company, but we have the boots, we have the experience, we have planted trees for many years, and we are promoting something that it looks kind of ironic, because we are saying we want to be innovative, planting native trees, which it shouldn't be in that way. So I think that in general, it's not a matter of self-confidence. It's a matter of the reality. When you read the report, you think how tiny we are. Very tiny. We have 7 trillion, and impact funds are 4.6 billion. So it's not a matter just of us. And it's also the imbalance between private sector and public sector. The negative outflows of the private sector is 5 trillion. But the positive outflows is 44 or 35 billion. So I think that is one of the things that we are actually trying to think is how can we change this balance? If you go around the COP, you will see many programs, and all the programs ask you, are you from the government? No, I'm from the private sector. This is a program from the government. So the majority are programs that are going through governments, but actually the negative outflows are coming from the private sector. This is the first thing. And the second, how much is your investment? How much are you proposing? We are proposing 200 million. For us, it's big. I mean, it's big, and and we have many restrictions. And you are maybe in the state of the art of forestry development, and you know how difficult it is to reproduce seedlings in a very responsible way. So it's just not a matter of planting, or throwing seeds. It's totally a process. So when people ask you, how big are you? 200 million. You are so small. So at some point, it's kind of frustrating going, and we have done this for the last, 3-4 days, going to all the pavilions and talking with a lot of people. And I will say that 95% of the people is looking for public financing, not for private financing. And we have to change that. We have to. We see in the report, we can read in the report that 500 billion is coming from real estate, for example, just real estate. And just think how many private equity funds are investing in real estate. And how many are investing in impact, investment, restoration, investment, any nature-based solution investment. So I think that this is our challenge. And this is, again, coming back to Restoration Seed Capital Facility. I think that programs that Restoration Seed Capital Facility that belongs to the UNEP are the ones that are looking, okay, who is there, who is on the ground, who is trying to do things, and let's add efforts. We would like to add efforts with companies like you. I think that at some point we have buying seedlings from you, so we really appreciate what you are doing. We are part of the Amazon, the smallest part of the Amazon in the northwest part, but we are part of the Amazon, so we want to be part of all the Amazon programs. So I think that this is the challenge, and I think the private sector has to arise as an alternative for a solution and to flow positive resources to mitigate this. So thank you again for the invitation.
Thank you very, very much, Diego. And indeed, the Restoration Seed Capital Facility is also part of that package, actually, of support from BMZ that not only produces the report, but also supports the Restoration Seed Capital Facility to demonstrate and to provide proof of concept of how we can flip that 7 trillion that impacts nature into an opportunity of doing things differently. We do have a couple of minutes for a question from the audience. If anyone would like to address our esteemed panel. Otherwise, I will ask each one of you for a 30-second takeaway message that I will carry also to the press conference as this is the launch of the report. Nikki, please. And Heike, I'm coming to you as well.
Thank you so much. Well, it's just really inspiring to hear this trio of approaches, and I've learned a lot, and I'm very happy to be part of this. It's the big turnaround. I mean, that's the message. It's how do we, also what was said earlier, how do we integrate, connect, and be really smart about moving piece by piece elements of that 7 trillion onto the other side of the ledger. We can't expect this to happen overnight, the whole amount. We need to be strategic in our interventions and smart, and I think this report can help, not just inform and also necessarily alarm, but also guide and help us focus these efforts. And then it's over to these amazing interventions on the ground that will make a difference.
So over to your neighbor.
Thank you. My point here is a call to action for everyone, in a sense that it's time to do on the ground, to create concrete actions to foster market-based nature solutions. I think it's stop discussing, thinking, dreaming, doing action on the ground.
Superb. Over to you, Mary.
I will reinforce that.
Carina.
Just to be honest, it's exactly what we have to do right now. People always, we analyze too much. We say, oh, there's too many risks involved. You're too small, you're too big, you're... No. We have to overcome these barriers because it is mind barriers. Mm-hmm. It is. Yeah. So we have to overcome this and to work a little bit together. De-risking these investments turn around. It's not a matter of a government. It's not a matter of international cooperation helping find a facility. It is a matter of private sector engaging that, because it will only the risk when they say, okay, I'm ready to get into this game. And the government has to be together, because we are doing a lot of incentives that can actually play an important role in connecting this. But it is a platform. It is a shared responsibility among all the three we represent here, the four of us represent here. So that's the call to action, in coordination, and not wait for the next report.
Yeah. Wonderful. Thank you, Carina. Diego?
Yeah, I mean, I like the let's do it.
Let's do it.
Let's do it. I mean,
Just do it.
let's do it. I mean, let's go. And we were happy. Actually, we are really happy on the field, on the ground, planting trees, doing that. Mm-hmm. So we'll like to do it.
All right. Wonderful. Heike, any 30-second thoughts?
Yeah, thank you so much and for your inspiring 30 seconds. So I would say we have to turn around our thinking radically and put an economic value more on nature and nature capital, by then becoming nature-based solutions the new normal, and not the exception, but that has to be the new normal. And then the exception only when there's no nature solution involved.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. A big round of applause for the panel, please. And just plagiarizing, I'd like to invite you to read the report. It's available on the UNEP website. It's launched today. Turn around your minds so that we can turn around the money. Thank you very, very much.